So we've just left off talking about 1971 Bretton Woods system of agreement. And Mario, you were saying that in that year, did Federal Reserve move from gold standard to a paper standard, essentially, or what has happened?
Yeah, exactly. That year changed many things. Up
Hmm.
until then, we had the gold standard. That meant that paper dollars were backed by physical gold. There was an equivalence of $33 per ounce of gold.
Hmm.
So you could go to the Federal Reserve and exchange, give them $33, and they will give you an that's in theory. In practical terms, that would be very difficult to happen because um, already in 1971, it was very difficult to do that. They didn't want to basically give up the gold already because they knew they didn't have enough gold in the um, in the phase. So yeah, they
Hello, you still with us, Mario?
here, LV.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Hmm.
So as I was saying, partly because the Fed didn't have enough gold to cover all of the dollars in circulation, they broke the standard and they allow a free exchange rate between gold and dollars.
Hmm.
Um, so this one of the things that happened was a confidence crisis 21, and then we all know what happened in the 1970s. There was one of the worst inflation crisis that we can remember and but it all boils down to confidence. The people lost confidence in the dollar, and then there was all this crisis. Um, so uh, So as I said before, it's very important that the Fed is fully transparent to keep the confidence of investors and to keep confidence of the people. Because right now the dollars are not backed by gold; they are backed by confidence, and this is extremely important. So, one of the points in Kevin Warsh, as I said, to make some things a bit more opaque, which really worries me because this could trigger some nasty things.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, I agree with what you say. In general, from my analysis of his nomination, basically what he stands for is uh, cutting interest rate in general, policy of more dovish stance as opposed to hawkish stance. So in the presentation slides, I wanted to explain like briefly as well the difference for our viewers between the dovishness and the hawkishness. These are like two basically stock market slants, which market participants and analysts use to evaluate the current Federal Reserve policy and stance on monetary policy. The dovish, meaning like doves, the birds that fly, are usually very peaceful birds, and they not causing any trouble to any other animal population in the universe. Hence the term dovishness in the markets. It basically means that the Fed that wants to stimulate the economy, that wants to promote the policy of lowering interest rates, promote the policy of borrowing within the economy, actively stimulate the GDP growth, as opposed to hawkishness. Hawkishness comes from hawks. Hawks are very predatory species in the universe. And in the context of Federal Reserve, it means the Fed that is actually actively trying to eradicate inflation in, for example, current economic landscape. If inflation goes too high, or we have high RPIs, high CPIs indexes, prices are rising, and whilst the economy may be rising as well, eventually the rise in general pricing is very harmful for the world economy, and the consumers are not able to buy the goods and services they need because of high prices, which generates lower demand, which will eventually slow down the economy and be very harmful for consumers again. And to keep the balance between the dovishness and the hawkishness policies, the Federal Reserve deviates from one stance to another, and they make quarterly, monthly, as well as annual representations on what they want to achieve in their monetary policies and in the quantitative easing policies as well. And coming back to Kevin Warsh, he stands more on the dovish stance generally as a new chair. He wants policy of lowering interest rates as opposed to high interest rates in his tenure.
Arthur or Mario, whoever of you is best placed to comment, maybe you can sort of walk us through for the listeners how the sort of expected mandate of Walsh to reduce the interest rates is going to translate to sort of borrowing rates for central banks, the wider economy, the impact on the stock market. Maybe sort of walk us through sort of what investors and the general public can expect to be the main impacts of that.
Hmm. I'll let Mario start and then I'll chip in.
Yeah, sure. Um, well, one of the things that Kevin Warsh said was to reform the Fed. And to one of the things also was to use more the Treasury general account, as long as I've seen. And he mentioned in the press conference. Um, what that means is to use the general account. This is an account where the taxpayers, so it's like a bank account. It currently has around $1 billion in it. Sorry, $1 billion actually in it. So Warsh plans to use it. Now he cannot directly use it. He has the one managing this account is it's somebody from the government. But because he's very close to the government, and um, he's gonna have it easy to basically use it, and he plans to use it obviously to lower the uh, the interest rates. So the bonds basically they yield. They have a yield basically,
Hmm.
and he plans to use it to buy bonds on the of long duration, more than short duration. Um, and by doing that, because there's going to be more demand for bonds, the yield is going to be lower, which means that the rates, long-term rates, are going to be lower. Um, so this is one of the mechanisms he plans to lower interest rates. I think it's fine that he does that. The only thing is that obviously this Treasury General Account is also used for many other things, um, like all the expenses. So let's see how much he can use it. Uh, but it's a it's a mechanism that makes sense. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, that in terms of lowering the interest rates that the Fed has set, which basically affects short-term rates, um, he's going to have it a bit more difficult because he'll have to keep an eye on inflation. He cannot lower the rates, obviously, if inflation is too high. Um, as we commented in previous podcasts, right now the inflation is not going to get any lower or sustainable any lower. Why? Because the government spending is at all-time highs. The spending on AI infrastructure is as well. It's incredible. A lot of demand to issue debt, and this basically is not going to make the interest rates, the official interest rates, to go lower. He cannot do it, otherwise make the lose bad inflation, and he's not going to do that, even though it has been nominated by Trump. I think that is going to do. So yeah, I think he has this kind of
Yeah.
are very important for the economy and for for issue debt, usually issue with um, long-term maturities. So yeah, I think on that side he's going to do a good job. I don't
Just to
know, Arthur.
clarify very quickly, Mario, you mentioned about the use of the Treasury General account. Is that a new mechanism that Warsh wants to implement, or is this simply something that he's doing or planning to do more of compared to previous Fed chairs? Could you maybe clarify that for the listeners?
No, it's not a new mechanism that was used in the past, um, but it wasn't used as much as he's planning to use. One of the things he said he's planning to increase the collaboration, let's say, with the government, and which basically means using more the this account, Treasury General account. Um, but this has been done in the past, as long as I've said. But it's like something that was there but was not widely used. Same as the money printing was not widely used until 2008, when when the Great Depression, sorry, when the Great Financial Crisis came, uh, which mark a point and a before and after. And from that point, printing money became very normal, so they use it every time. I think it's just he's just planning to use it more than before.
Yeah, and I'll chip in as well. Whilst Mario was talking, I opened this slide of CPI course chart from 2020 and up till 2026 now. And what we are having right now is that the official inflation target in the US, and by the way, in the UK as well, it's 2%. So the central bank and the Federal Reserve aims to have 2% inflation year on year, quarter on quarter. But we barely had any time throughout any last 6 years and even going further in the past, since actually the cancellation of gold standard in 1971, where we had 2% inflation target achieved. We kind of always been on the higher end of this target. If you remember this chart, I showed it a bit earlier. Since 1971, this is what happened with inflation. It just skyrocketed. And the reason for that, as Mario correctly mentioned, is that central banks can now freely print money, cash, because it's no longer pegged to something tangible and real, like a resource, such as gold. Coming back to Kevin Warsh, actually, and what's going on with his agenda is that, generally speaking, yes, he's quite a dovish new Fed chair appointed by Trump. And as we mentioned, the President Trump really, really wants to have a lower interest rate in the economy. Why? Because lower interest rate, first and foremost, for the President Trump, it leads to stimulation of the stock market. The President Trump wants to have like a high levels of stock market because he uses it to evaluate his personal performance success. Second reason is that the consumer borrowing, the President Trump, again, he wants to have a high level of GDP growth stimulation, maybe unfrozen market of houses, the housing market, um, to have more mortgages being created to let people buy more homes. And yes, obviously, the by lowering interest rates, the housing market could become more affordable in the short term. However, the war in Iran, which started happening in February, March, and is still ongoing, have led to increase in inflation levels because of spike of oil prices. So now we have a dilemma where the US housing market is in a bad shape. The economy needs further stimulation, requires lower interest rates, but the actual inflation rate is getting higher. So even if new Fed Chair Kevin Warsh wants to cut interest rate and maybe have already agreed with President Trump to cut interest rate in the future, he's actually unable to do so because we have a high inflation rate, and uh, certainly like lowering interest rate, it will create even more upward pressure on inflation. So it is an interesting dilemma, and market analysts argue about this. Do you guys think that what he should do, new Fed chair, if you were him? Would would you lower the rate, higher, up the rate, or would you leave it the same? Like,
Well, um, Arthur, I don't think, like you said, he can do that at least straight away, um, and not for the next foreseeable future in terms of I would even say years. Um, if and you touch a very good point about the oil prices. We have a problem right now with oil prices, um, which has been postponed so far, right? And this is the closure of the Hormuz Strait. So since 2 months or 3 months ago, there were almost no ships carrying oil or anything through the strait. And obviously, there is a lot of world demand of oil that goes through the strait. And even if other routes have been used for this for to transport the oil, that has not been enough. So what have the countries been doing so far? They have some oil reserves and they have been consuming them. to to close the gap between demand and supply. And we have a chart showing that. Um, this is basically, this shows that since the strait was closed,
Hmm.
the reserves of oil have been diminishing,
Hmm.
and they have diminishing at a very important rate. Um, and if they continue at this rate, probably by end of summer, they will be at a very dangerous level. And if there is the traffic through the Hormuz Strait is still closed, we need to have to find a solution. Otherwise, the price of oil could even spike more than at the moment. And this is a problem that has been postponed, as I said. Mm, there has to be a solution at some point, otherwise the countries will run out of reserves.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. But on the point of, I think Alvi mentioned that he found a conflict between now former chair of Federal Reserve Jerome Powell and President Trump, quite weird and from first stance and um, inexplicable, if I'm right to say, right? Like you were sort of like saying that, oh, how this could be happening because technically the Federal Reserve should be independent from a government and the Federal Reserve should exercise the policy based on their own knowledge and merit about the economy, independently from a government and from fiscal policies, right?
Yeah, I mean it's par for the course with how Trump likes to operate. From his first declarations when he first came into office about draining the swamp, he sees himself as like an individual who can try to shape things individually. And often lots of people take the flak for that. It could be his press officer, it could be Jerome Powell. I do think in relation to the discussion that we've had about the independence of the Federal Reserve, when you have, or the supposed independence of the Federal Reserve, I think when you have a president that so openly criticizes and tries to peddle for influence, it does um, impact the credibility of the whole system. So yeah, from a sort of personal standpoint, I do find that a little bit concerning. And as you guys have touched upon, although Trump may want to um, see interest rates drop to boost the stock market, you guys have obviously mentioned that more practical, immediate economic concerns such as rising inflation due to the Strait of Hormuz crisis with the oil prices, it's not going to be something that can be achieved immediately. So it's very much par for the course with Trump. A lot of noise, a lot of gesticulation, grand ideas, but perhaps the actual change will be much less immediate and much less spectacular than he hopes to see.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you spot on. Like you kind of have a good analysis overview of a situation. Basically, like last week, if you followed again this very same topic after the nomination of Kevin Warsh, actually official nomination took place. Trump said that he would allow new chair to decide what he wants to do with interest rate on his own merit. So, like at least publicly for now, the president has made the remark that he would trust the new chair to determine interest rate independently. Um, so
that's until he wakes up tomorrow and he thinks otherwise.
Exactly. Trump changes his mind every single day. We were talking about the war in Iran would be over in a matter of days.
Mhm.
In one press conference, he was then talking about, well, Vietnam lasted 10 years, so I don't know how this one's going to last. I,
Mhm.
I don't know how seriously we can read into those remarks. We have to wait for actions. Remarks are very cheap and easy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course,
true.
now he has a lot of patience because he chose it. He thinks, okay, everything is going to change. But yeah, let's see how it plays out.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, in technical terms, the Federal Reserve, to address the point of independence, the Federal Reserve is still independent, in my view, from the US government and from the president. However, it's been under a lot of pressure recently from the US president and from US government administration in general to shape its policy to fit around the government policy. And yes, in an ideal course of things, the central bank should coordinate the effort with the government to determine the best course of economic policy. But if, let's say, they have disagreements, they could exercise like slightly different policies, you know. For example, as we said earlier, like the primary goal right now is to tame inflation for the central bank, for the Federal Reserve. And so they should focus on taming inflation, not stimulating actually economic growth, not fitting around the president agenda, you know. The war in Iran has had a disastrous impact on oil prices and geopolitical stability in general. So the Federal Reserve shouldn't try to solve this mess, you know. It's the government responsibility to solve this mess that they started, you know.
Yeah, there's something we haven't touched. So we said lots of problems with the new nomination of Kevin Warsh, but we haven't said anything positive about him. So
Mhm.
in order to do that, I think he still has some positive things, such as moving away from some statistics, let's say. Uh, the most famous of it is the PCE, which is the personal consumer expenditures, that the Federal Reserve so far use it as the main indicator to set their policy, the interest rates. Um, so he's trying to move away from that into something else that he hasn't yet specified. Uh, the issue with this indicator to set the interest rate is that it's a very lagging indicator,
Mhm.
meaning that the economy could be this indicator could be reflecting things in the economy they are not current, and for example, this indicator could be flagging the economy is doing good right now, but actually it may be doing good 6 months ago, or a lagging indicator, and he's trying to move on to other kind of more current or more forward-looking indicators. So this is something I and are transparent. That's something I like. But yeah, just to cannot remember anything else he said. It would be good.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it's spot on. There's actually quite a few policies that Kevin Walsh proposed prior to becoming a nominee and whilst he was becoming a nominee for the Federal Reserve chair. And he's made already his first speech, but he hasn't yet made a full FRMC conference with Federer was being on a position. And for the record, basically the FRMC meetings happen periodically, and in those meetings they decide the fate of interest rate. And more important, often for the markets, they also decide the fate, they give the guidance for the market, what the rate will be in, let's say, 3 months, 6 months, and a year time. And often the markets say, okay, the rate has been left unchanged. The markets kind of expected it because technically the markets can like predict what the decision on the rate policy will be based on current economic data. But the market is always left in the dark, will be left in the dark on the guidance because that is more shaped by the professional view of FRMC members, and in particular by Kevin Warsh, like how they see the economic data, what they see currently is going on with employment, um, GDP growth, even oil prices, wars. What they see is currently the most important pressing issue for the economy. They will take that into account, and then they will say, let's say in 6 months' time, we're gonna be actually hiking interest rates because we feel inflation is getting out of control, and we need to tame it. And also, like, if you can see my screen as well, like I keep opening this article. It's by Janus Henderson Investors. This is a famous US investing powerhouse. They like do assessments on like individual companies and also like the macro standpoints on US economy and US monetary policies. So they actually produced this little article which explains what Kevin Warsh like stands for. We already covered it a little bit earlier here, like a smaller balance sheet. He wants to make Fed Treasury dynamic, less kind of give less to forward guidance to markets, kind of become more like uh, reactive in approaches to issues that are happening. And this is understandable because like we have so many things that happen like sometimes even daily in the world economy, and like the Federal Reserve should like sometimes it feels like it needs to react daily and adjust their policies. But this is obviously not how it works. Like it takes months or even years sometimes for the economy, let's say, to feel the impact of a change of interest rate. Like even if, for example, the market wants the economy would benefit from lower interest rate, even if Federal Reserve lowers it tomorrow, we're gonna have an impact of lower interest rate felt in the economy within like minimum few months, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. We have many examples across the recent years on that. First one is for example the COVID crash, where they
Hmm.
lower interest rates. Well, basically they lowered them to zero in March 2020. Plus they bought bonds like bonds and even backed asset. Sorry, bonds that represent mortgages or backed by mortgages. They bought them like never before. Uh, and basically this somewhere I remember this represented like net interest rates of -8 or -9%, something like that, uh, between between all the buying they've done and setting the interest rates officially to zero. Uh, so this was not felt by the economy until the boom that happened in 2021, right? Um, so you could see even late 2021, that was when the stock market boomed, and it basically marked the peak. The peak. So yeah, it takes a lot of time. Takes a lot of time. I think the stock market was kind of sidelined until late 2020, and then it shoot up, something like that. But yeah, it took several months for that.
Mm. Yeah, a very good point, and it brings my thought process to like a little bit a little bit different, but also related topic to this discussion, is that actually, as we talked about the President Trump, he is very effective in exploring like the inefficiencies in current systems, whatever his system he's involved in, and then exploring the weaknesses in that system and drawing it to his political advantage. So one of the reasons why he was so negative about um, Jerome Powell and his monetary policy, obviously mentioned that Jerome Powell was basically keeping his interest rate policy unchanged, or even he was more of a hawkish character, federal chair. He didn't want the rates to go as quickly down as Trump wanted, or maybe some other economists wanted. But Donald Trump in his remarks was often saying that Fed is basically is out of shape system in the US, that Federal Reserve uses a lot of lagging economic data rather than a leading economic data. So, for the record, in the economy, we have leading economic indicators, which are based on a forward-looking data, and we have also lagging economic indicators, which use in previous data, like the historical data. And obviously, like we have more lagging economic indicators than leading economic indicators. But a lot of economists recently made the point that because we have this very rapidly changing global geopolitical environment and global economic environment, events such as, for example, the COVID, March 2020, it took 1 month for the whole world to go into lockdown. And then we had the war in Ukraine, that oil prices spike, and then most recent, obviously, Iran crisis, also March 2026. So these kind of black swan events, um, the unusual pattern events, they happen more and more often in a short period of time, and we generate very rapid, sudden influx of new data. And the Federal Reserve, based on its current structure, it's unable to react to that data, and unable to respond very quickly to rapidly changing economic environment. Some economists argue again, like some people say that, oh, they're still doing a very fine job, but there's been more and more criticism because of like the events that happen, and then this very slow response from a Federal Reserve. So Trump is actually has effectively explored these weaknesses, and these theses made by economists about the fact that Federal Reserve reacts so slowly to lagging economic indicators, and this is why he was so adamant in trying to like fire Jerome Powell or make him uncomfortable and basically succumb to his wishes of lowering interest rates by a wider margin.
Yeah, so I agree on reforming the Fed for to make its decisions based on more leading indicators than lagging indicators, like you said. I think this is gonna benefit a lot the policy that the Fed is taking.
Mhm.
Um, and I agree that the indicators that right now they use, they are very lagging. They are even very old. PC is maybe from before 2050. GDP as well is from the beginning of last century. And they need to modernize. That's that's a very good point. But also the economy, it's a very, it's like you said, it's very slow moving, right? It's like a very heavy train
Mhm.
to make a comparison. So you cannot make the Fed um, move this train quickly or react with quickly actions because the train is not going to respond um, quickly to these actions. So I think the in instability or the lack of predictability in terms of the current world events, it's been more a political problem than an economic problem, and and that the Fed should not react to every single Trump tweet
It
or
is very hard not
Trump
to.
craziness.
It is very hard
Y-
not to, yes.
Yeah, but as I said, it's very difficult to move a heavy train with all Trump's reactions. It's like even if you take action, it's not gonna move until several months after you took the action. Um, so uh, what I think it has to do is yes, use leading indicators and adapt to an political or a political world that is very unstable right now. And that means taking more caution in terms of setting its policies because you cannot really predict too much what is going to happen. Um, you know that the world is going to be unstable, uh, at least while Trump is in power, the world is going to be unstable. And you have to adapt to the new normal. So yeah, they have to think what's the best uh, policies, um, taking into account that the world is very unstable.
On the point of the transition to leading indicators, this potentially sounds like a very positive, forward-thinking reform. In terms of the practical implementation of that, is that something that Warsh is able to implement unilaterally? Will there be a vote on this? And with regards to the fact that many of the existing makeup of the Board of Governors is unchanged. Is this something that is likely to be approved?
Yeah, I'll start on this. Yeah, very good points. Kevin Warsh has a lot of ideas about leading economic indicators and reforming, for example, CPI, how it's measured. That's a leading indicator on inflation index. But he will not be able to implement his new ideas, at least in the short term. So Kevin Walsh will not be able to implement his ideas because the current Fed board of governors, they're still sort of friendly, more colleague friendly towards Jerome Powell. And don't forget, as we mentioned earlier, Jerome Powell remains on the board up until 2027, the earliest. So the board is very much still very loyal to him. Lisa Cook, for example, the another governor, like she's been under severe attacks from Donald Trump last year as well. Um, and there's been even like criminal investigation opened into her case initiated by U.S. government. And the core thesis here was linked that she was very much again like against lowering interest rates, and she had her own like policy agenda within the Federal Reserve, and this had stark contrast to what the U.S. government, the president, was envisioning for the Fed. And Lisa Cook still remains on the board of governors. So I don't think Kevin Warsh will be able to advance his agenda for leading economic indicators very quickly. But having said that, it all depends on his obviously like interpersonal skills within the board, um, how the transitions to other new board of governance will happen because I think the U.S. government and Donald Trump in particular, he understands that he needs like more loyal people to him on the board as well, not just Kevin Warsh. And as people's rotations happen, maybe the advance of the reform of Federal Reserve will happen um, quicker. But for now, I don't. I think it will be slower rather than quickly.
Yeah, I agree on that. He will have to introduce that mm, slower indicator by indicator.
Mm.
But I see that it's going to be easier doing that than directly lower interest rates like Trump wants him to do. Mm, So, uh, yeah, but I think I'm pretty confident he's gonna reform with at least some leading indicators, which is good. I think it's positive. But yeah, it's gonna take time, and you know, uh, we will see. But it's gonna be slow.
Hmm. And I also chip in on some related topic as well. Like as I said, Karen Walsh has a lot of ideas. I showed some of his ideas on the screen, but he was also known to be a crypto enthusiast. Like previously, it was reported that he invested into some crypto assets, and that he will be the first most crypto positive Fed chair on the board. And the reason why this is important is, let's say, before the election of Donald Trump in the Biden era, the government was very much against crypto assets. And the SEC, Security and Exchange Commission, this is an organ that regulates the licensing issuing for companies, for securities. They win against crypto. And the Federal Reserve was also generally against crypto assets. But since Donald Trump was elected, the new SEC nomination followed, and now the new Fed chair nomination as well. The person who is more positive about crypto, this would have a positive impact on crypto assets as well in the long term, again, not in the short term immediately, but perhaps in the long term.
Is there a
Yeah,
segue, guys, we can make to stablecoin, or is that perhaps a discussion for another time?
yeah, that will be for another time. That's a
Another
big
time.
discussion. Just to mention something on that, the there is this big law that around the stable coins that they are planning to introduce. The current biggest obstacle is banks, and it's going to be difficult to convince banks that they allow for that. First, because they are big donors of the Republican Party, from both parties actually. They are big donors, and obviously parties, even if they are very keen to crypto, they don't want to lose their one of the biggest financiers of them. Um, so yeah, that's basically what the biggest obstacle right now for anything crypto to progress in terms of law.
Hmm. Yeah, agreed. And the stable coins, like it needs to be support both from SSC and Federal Reserve for to advance, and also from commercial banks. And it seemed like last few months commercial banks have been unwilling to cooperate because of potential fear of diverting general deposits from banks to stable coins and crypto exchanges.
Yeah, yeah, they don't want to lose their business, so which is understandable. So yeah,
Great. Well, it was nice having you guys. Thank you very much for the great discussion, and I hope our viewers enjoyed it as well.
thanks guys, thanks
Cheers,
Arthur,
everyone.
thanks LV.